Erika Atkins is a career coach who uses her 20 plus years of experience to lead you to your next big win by giving you the training needed to ace your next interview. She inspires her clients to create, navigate, and cultivate their dreams. According to Erika, people are born with talents, but to be your greatest of all times, you've got to have battle-ready responses, an adaptable attitude, and a strategic plan. In this interview, Coach Erika talks about how to prepare for an interview, how to respond to interview questions so that you can get your dream job. Erika is a true legend and a fantastic human being. Here she is, the fantastic Erika Atkins on the Barry Media Show. All right, Erika, thank you for being on the Barry Media Show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing great too.
Great. All right. Can you provide us with some background?
So, I have been in the professional recruitment, placement, and career coaching business for about 20 years. What I love to do is help people reach their goals and their dreams. Basically, my focus is to help people create and navigate their career path.
So let's talk about assessing your value, like how to communicate your value.
Mm-hmm. Well, first things first, you want to assess your value. So what does that look like? You want to take a scratch pad and write down what are the things that you actually do well and how can you help an organization? And that will be able to help you communicate your value to an organization, because I got to tell you, if you don't know what you can do well, they surely don't know what you can do well. So, for instance, if I am a physician, and I'm bringing this up because I recently took on coaching a physician, and he's an ER physician. He's actually led and transitioned several ERs, but he could not answer the basic question, what kind of leader are you? Now, he wanted to transition out of being an ER physician into a full leadership position, but he couldn't answer the question, what kind of leader are you? If you can't do that, if you can't tell me what it is that you're going to do as a leader, how could I possibly give you a leadership position? So if you can't tell me what you're going to do as an analyst or as a nurse or whatever it is that your position is, how can I possibly hire you? So a good way to get started when you're on your own is go out and look at the job titles and assess the job description that is underneath them. Write down all the things that you do well, okay? And then create stories and opportunities based off of your experience about that and be able to articulate that to the person interviewing you.
Often, the interviewer tend to ask the question, "Tell me about your weaknesses." Like, what do you think of that question? What is the purpose behind that question?
You know, the first things first. When an interviewer asks you that question, I want you to embrace it. You're going to get that question. I want you to say something like, "Thank you for asking me that. I'm happy you asked me that question because it gives me an opportunity to present where I have grown." Okay. And that's how I want you to look at that particular question. I'm not sure what everybody's weaknesses are, but you are going to have one. It might be your organizational skills. It might be your tendency to work in a vacuum or work alone. It might be your tendency to be a chatterbox. Whatever that weakness is, talk about how you've learned to manage that particular weakness. You can tell a story about when your weakness would have gotten your way, but you made a decision, you created some boundaries for yourself, and were able to manage that particular situation well. I'll give you for instance. I have a friend who's in human resource management. As a matter of fact, he's a director, and he's a chatterbox. He loves to talk. His interviews tend to go on way too long. So for that reason, he puts a little time clock on his desk that counts him down where he is in the interview. He also has a specific group of questions that he asks. He also communicates to the person beforehand, I'd really like this interview to last about 45 minutes. Could you help me along with keeping time? So he's asking for partnership. Now, if you know time management is your weakness, or if you know that you tend to be a chatterbox, set those boundaries up front. So it's not really about someone trying to pick out where you are deficient. It's really about the interviewer wanting you to be a well-managed person, because none of us are perfect. We all have to be self-aware to be successful.
What advice do you give for people going into a job interview?
So, if we were not in the midst of COVID-19, I might not say this particular thing first, even though it's important for us to do this. But I would take a mental health check, and I would be able to talk about where you are in the midst of COVID-19 and how it has affected you, how you've been able to manage it with your family. I would check in with the interviewer at that point so that I created a point of connection. And I would ask them, how are they managing it? This is a circumstance that we're in that everybody is experiencing the same thing, maybe not in the same way, but if you do that, you're creating a connection point and you're making yourself a whole person. So it is very important to be able to connect with a person who's interviewing you right now. And if you talk about what's going on with the pandemic, it's a bonding point. So I would suggest to do that first. Then I would also come in with a mindset when it comes to going on an interview. And now this is at any time with an interview. Your posture should be, how can I help? Okay. The organization is hiring someone not because they want to spend money, not because they want to make your life better, because, oh my God, I have this great interview and we take on this posture. Oh, I'm going to get paid a little more. I'm going to, be able to be in this new environment. We start really thinking about, how is this job going to affect our lives? When our posture really should be, how can I help solve the problems of this organization? What kind of value can I add to the organization? What kind of things are they trying to accomplish that my skills will help them with? And so just taking on a posture of, how can I serve this organization? How can I help? That will take you a long way, because that's what they're interested in. So those are the things that I would tell someone right off. So let's talk about, why are you being interviewed in the first place? You're interviewing someone to see if they're a good match for your team. Okay, so let's look at what companies consider. Now, if you're a corporation, if it's a larger company, your mindset, your training ability is going to be very different from a medium or a smaller company. For instance, Let's say that I have a human resource generalist position and I'm in a smaller company. In a smaller company, that job description is going to be very, very wide. And that person will probably also be responsible for training as well as some hiring and direct firing responsibilities. Versus in a larger company, that person really would be responsible for employment specialist type work, basically maybe just setting up interviews. Their job description is going to be much more narrow. I'll compare the large company to the small company again. In a small company, you're likely to get trained by baptism by fire, versus in a larger company, they're going to have a very structured training process. Why is that important for you to know? Because if I'm a small company, what I want to hear is that a person doesn't mind taking on new responsibilities. They don't mind doing things that are outside of their job description. As a matter of fact, they rather enjoy hopping in when necessary. I want to hear those kinds of things. Versus if I'm a large company, I want to hear from a person that they really enjoy being focused, but participating in teams where necessary and using their skill set to help grow the company. So it's just a different type of language that I'm looking for. Any company wants you to help them reach their particular goals, but how they do it is just very different based off of size. And then another general thing that I would like to see people do is I would like to see them go out to the company's website, large or small, possibly look up any articles of the people that they've written who are going to interview you. You get to learn a lot about a person's personality, their beliefs, their structure, and their values based off of pieces that they've written or goals that the organization is looking to accomplish. So you want to be able to discuss those things readily because they're very important. I want people to know how to take charge and own the interview right up front. And so almost in any conversation, how did we start this conversation? You said, "Hi Erica, how are you?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know I'm going to get asked that question. This is an opportunity for me to take charge of um, the interview. I get to say, you know what? I'm great. I'm excited to be here, but I'm also excited on a couple of things that I recently got to do. And for me, I might say I'm very excited because I got the opportunity to chat with Barry on his podcast. Or I might say, I'm also very excited because I got the opportunity to volunteer at the food pantry, and we helped over 1,000 people that day. I get to tell somebody right off about something important that I'm doing, something that's impactful for the community or important to me. And it's just a really good way to answer that question, because what people want to know is that you're engaged and that you're present, and that if you can be altruistic in some particular way, that's always a positive. So it's a way to just take charge of the interview right up front.
Great. So
Mm-hmm.
there's another trick question I wanted to ask you. So let's
Yeah.
say an interviewer asks you the question, if you were an ingredient in a salad, which one would you be? How do you answer that question?
You know what? There's no wrong answer, but you really want to be able to explain your answer. Okay. And I might say, I want to be the lettuce because I always want to be a part of what's going on. See? It's just my rationale behind it. And also the interviewer wants to know that you can think on your feet. They don't want you to have a blank look on your face or not be able to engage. You can also kind of laugh, say, oh my goodness, that's a funny question. You can just kind of laugh about it, and you can say, oh, let me see. Oh, I think I want to be the cheese, because everybody loves cheese. It's not a wrong answer. There's no wrong, there's no right, but you want to give someone insight into why you might say that.
There's another one, though, a very common one that you hear almost everywhere
Mm-hmm.
during an interview is, tell me something about yourself. Tell me about yourself.
Oh, I love, love, love that you asked that question, and everybody is going to ask you that question. So with that particular question, my warnings are the following. Talk about yourself professionally. Do not talk about your children. Do, do not talk about things that are, off the beaten path, and be sure to include a goal that you were able to achieve for your last organization, or perhaps even a goal that you hope to achieve for this particular organization. That would be awesome. Also, keep it brief. Do not go on forever. Tell me about yourself. Tell me what they're really asking you is, tell me why I should hire you. They're asking, tell me what you can do for my organization. They're saying, tell me what value you add to my company. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's what they're asking you. They are
Yeah.
not asking you how many children you have, what car you drive, what church you go to, or anything like that. Now, if you participating on a baseball team helped you get your last position, you might be able, or perhaps you got this interview because you participated on in an extracurricular activity. You might say something like, well, I met you because we play soccer together, and that's actually a big part of my life. I don't know if you know that I was one of the founding members of that particular soccer team. So I might say, and if you said, well, tell me about yourself, Erica, and we had met at a soccer game, I might say, well, um, I, I'm on the soccer team with you, but you may have not known that I'm one of the founding members. I actually created the bylaws for the organization and helped us get into the league that we're in right now. So I actually count that as one of my skills, where I can take something from scratch and create a foundation for others to build on. That's why I'm a great team leader. Now, I just took our situation, said what I was able to do for the organization, and popped it over into my professional world while creating a connection with the person who's interviewing me. That's the kind of thing that you want to do.
How do you get the hiring managers to believe you can do the job?
You want to know something? So, interviewing is great, and I believe in interviewing, but I want to talk about the three portals to entry into getting the job. Okay. Now, first is the standard interview process. You put your application on the internet, or you share your resume with somebody. They find your resume, somehow, and then you go in and you give your spill. Okay. And you are one among, who knows, 100, 1,000, who knows how many people you are interviewing, right? And the best thing that you can come in with is, evidence, maybe a portfolio of some sort. That is, that's really good. However, what is more impactful is if you have a reference, and your reference really knows your work, and so that's through networking. If that person trusts your reference, and your reference is giving you kudos and explaining their history with you, that is highly impactful. But in today's environment, you really want to be set apart. So this is what I recommend. Even if you're in an industry that is downsizing, I recommend that you have a performance-based hire. What does that look like? It's doing volunteer work, but better yet, look on the internet, do your research, or contact somebody who works at the company and find out what initiatives that they're working on. Then solve one of their problems. Put forth your effort, your presentation on solving that particular problem, and then just ask for an opportunity to present. A company's having a problem and you're coming up with an idea and you're going to present it for them. You're not going to charge them. They're going to be happy to listen to you. At the very least, you're going to set yourself apart from every other candidate. And if there's not a position, you may have just created one for yourself. So the reality is, you've got to go well beyond the interview these days. You've got to try to hit the ball out of the park.
Can someone social media keep him or her from getting a job?
Of course, 100%.
How?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. The reality is, you're thinking that you're making a nice little sassy political comment, here, there. And then your employer just looks on social media and say, oh my gosh, they liked that post with the protest on it. That's a little bit too risque, for us. Or how about you're drinking or you're smoking? Oh no, that's not our. We're a little bit more conservative, than that. So what you want to do is you want to try to make your Facebook, things of that nature, make those private, and then create a LinkedIn page where your professional connections are held. You would be surprised how many people don't have LinkedIn pages, particularly people in what I'm going to call more blue collar work, like plumbers and contractors, people of that nature. They have Facebook pages, but they don't have LinkedIn pages. And then another professional area who they're just really not on LinkedIn as of yet. They're getting there, but it's the medical professionals. There's not a lot of nurses on LinkedIn as they should be. CNAs, LPNs. The physicians are kind of on there, but not as much as they should be. And so there is still room to set yourself apart on LinkedIn. And I can guarantee you the clientele that's on Facebook, they're not on LinkedIn. And there are job opportunities that are on LinkedIn that you would never know about because, once you put them on Indeed and some of the Career Builder, Monster, those websites, the human resource manager or the hiring manager, they get bombarded with candidates that are not necessarily qualified for their position. So if you can really narrow the search for a particular position and get just a handful of candidates to choose from, then as a human resource manager, you're happier because what you really want is a handful of very qualified candidates that you can quickly sift through and then have confidence in.
So, what should one wear to the interview?
Once again, that's the kind of thing that depends on your profession. I'll give you a for instance. If you're a contractor and let's say you're going to work for a larger company, Don't go in a suit. Please do not go in a suit, but also don't go in looking dusty and dirty, right? Have on some nice khakis and work boots and maybe a polo. Okay? That would be great for an interview. I'll pick on the medical profession again. Should you, as a medical professional, should you or should you not go in your scrubs? Correct. You should not go in your scrubs unless the interviewer says, you know what, we're going to have a lab experience today, and so come on in your scrubs. But you need to be invited to come in your scrubs. And I cannot tell you how many medical professionals make that mistake. Okay. Another thing that you want to consider about your wardrobe is how you smell. Do not wear too much perfume or too much makeup. Do not have your tattoos and things of that nature showing. You want to cover those up for the interview. Consider your hairstyle. Consider it based off of the type of work that you are doing. Now, pink, purple, blue hair, all of that good stuff, it's very fashionable. And I'm not saying it doesn't make a statement, but does it make the right statement for your audience? Will you get the respect that you deserve in that interview setting? I don't care if you see people there with that particular hair color. What you want to do is earn the right to go ahead and wear that color. You don't want to assume it. That said, if you're working in a tattoo parlor and that's part of the culture, then by all means, have your tattoos showing and have your studs and your pink and purple hair, because you want to be a part of the culture. So there's just not one answer to this. You want to be smart about what you're doing. If I went for an interview in my pearls for the tattoo parlor, they'd probably say, "Ma'am, you're not a good fit." That's what they would tell me, and with good reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's the best time for an interview?
So there's a trick to this. If you can, you want to be the very first or the very last person they interview. You want to stay away from the mushy middle, because I got to tell you, all of the people in the middle, they just start blending together, and it's like, oh, well, what did he say? Was he the one that gave that really great answer, or was she the one that said that really smart thing? Everybody just kind of blends together. So if at all possible, try to be the very first one in the morning or the very last one on their calendar. Now, if you cannot get the first and the last, try to be the very first person before lunch. I mean, the last person before lunch, or the first one when they come back for lunch. So those are your B slots, but your A slots are those bookends.
What questions should one ask the interviewer?
First things first, you've got to ask a question. Do not leave the interviewer's site without asking a question. Show that you're interested. Show that you are prepared. So there are a couple that I like. A simple question. It shows that you're interested. So tell me what you like about working for this organization. So you get into this conversation and they say, oh, well, what I really like is the upward mobility. I actually started here as a secretary, and now I'm in HR. They paid for my schooling. And quite honestly, I've been here like 10 years. And if I can, I really want to retire from here. So now you're bonding, right? You have a little bit of a conversation going. You can talk about, what initiatives do you have, here at this organization? What things are you doing that an employee might be surprised about? You can talk about that. What are some projects that you're working on? Or what projects are they working on in the department where I'm planning on going? Ask those questions, and you'll be surprised how much information you will get. That way, when you go to the next part of your interview, you can share those details. It's not so robotic. You want to be organic if you can.
Right. Is it okay to ask about pay on the first interview?
Oh, please don't. That is the question that you definitely don't want to ask. It's really a gauche question. It's a poor taste, and it makes you seem as if you don't care about the mission of the organization, that you're really just looking for a job. You're looking for a paycheck. And I don't care what industry you're in. You don't want someone who doesn't care about the values of your organization and who's just looking to maybe be a seat warmer and do as little as possible in order to get paid. That's not the impression that you want to leave.
So, how should one follow up after an interview?
So there are two ways that I really like. Now, there is nothing that beats a handwritten note. There's nothing that beats a nice card. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you not to call, but gosh, a phone call can feel intrusive and annoying, because you must remember they have a whole nother job to do, and they have interviewed several people, and phone calls, do you like listening to voicemails? I hate it. Do you, Barry?
Sometimes.
I just hate listening to voicemails. They seem so cumbersome. I'm thinking in my mind, you could have texted me. But the reality is, the average person probably gets, at least, 10 to 20, especially if you're in HR, you get a lot of voicemail. So you don't want a person to have to sift through that. Just to hear, hi, I was following up on my interview, and I really wanted you to know that I'm very interested. It doesn't make a real strong impact. Okay, so I would avoid the phone call unless someone told you, definitely give me a call. I'd appreciate that. Now, the other way that I really like is electronic communication. This would be via email or a connection via LinkedIn. I really like LinkedIn, and because you can send a note, and now you have a personal connection within the company, because if you don't get that particular position, you have an opportunity to follow up with that hiring manager personally. And let me tell you, this worked so well for one of my students. There's an organization here in St. Louis. It's Washington University.
I've heard of it.
It's a wonderful university, and they partner with BJC Medical Center, and they have so many locations here in St. Louis. As a matter of fact, they are the largest employer in Missouri, employing over 30,000 people. Okay, so they're a really big employer. That said, it is very hard. It is very difficult to get into WashU for several reasons. One of them being that they will pay the college tuition for you and your children after you work for them for 7 years. Okay, so that is huge, and the benefits are just fabulous beyond that. Okay, because it's a partnership between Washington University and BJC, they've got it covered. They got you covered when it comes to education, and they got you covered when it comes to healthcare. So they're just killing it. So you could just imagine the benefits package, as well as the connectivity that they have in the community. Now, so my student was just really dead set on getting this position, and they had given her great feedback all the way through. and she was their number 2 choice. They don't hire the number 2 choice for the position. There's only one position. She was the number 2 choice. So she used my method of getting connected, via LinkedIn and writing a nice little professional note. Okay. Then with that, she waited about 30 days and just dropped a, "Hi, how are you? I saw this position on your website. I was curious. Do you think I would be a good fit for it?" Sure enough, they brought her right in. And this time around, she was the number 1 pick. And it was that warm connection that got her in the door. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even the same hiring manager, but because of her previous experience with this hiring manager, she passed that right on. Bam, she's in her dream position.
Great, great. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we end this interview?
Oh gosh, this is a very important time because we're in a pandemic. This is, God forbid that this ever happens again. So there are a lot of people out there that are they're hurting, they're frustrated. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and so it's just overwhelming. What I want everyone to do, even though you're out of work at this particular time, get grounded. Don't panic, and think about what your skills are. And then after you do that, start translating that into actual work product. Because there's so many people looking for jobs right now, you need to distinguish yourself from the pack. Okay, and work product is the way that you do that. Now, there's other things that you can do that would be productive, like getting a certification in a particular area, going back to school, but those things don't necessarily get you access to the people that are hiring. Producing work product does. You want to solve people's problems. So there you go.
Great interview. Thank you very much for this interview, Erika.
My pleasure.
How to get a hold of you?
So it's really best to contact me on LinkedIn. I am Erika Atkins on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thanks to my guest, Erika Atkins. Thanks to you for listening. You can connect with Erika on LinkedIn at Erika Atkins. The Barry Media Show takes you places that you have never imagined. You can find me on Instagram at Barry Medias and on Twitter at Barry Medias. The Barry Media Show was written and produced by me, Mamadou Barry,